Hello and welcome to episode 8 of the Top of Off podcast. And today we're going to be looking at day 2 of the second test between England and the West Indies. And we are joined today, we're very pleased to announce, by a very, very special guest, real life, a human being, professional cricketer, Maia Bouchier. So welcome, Maia, to the podcast.
Hi. I'm very happy to be on it.
Maia, do you want to just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and who you play for and so on, just to get them acquainted with you?
So I'm playing for Hampshire right now. I've been a part of the Southern Vipers for 2 years. I played for Middlesex for most of my life, under 11s until under 19s. And then I've been part of the England Women's Academy for the last year, but the programme since under 15s. So I've been involved in cricket for a long time, and I've absolutely loved it, loved every minute. And yeah, so I'm just hoping to talk about cricket because what else can we do?
That is literally the entire point of this.
Yeah.
That's this podcast.
That would be a good place to start, I think.
Yeah.
So, Pav, do you want to give us our traditional quick overview of the day, and then we can get into some issues?
Yeah, no, I will do. So the day began with England resuming from their overnight total of 207 for 3, with Ben Stokes and Dom Sibley at the crease under a gloomy and overcast Manchester sky. Despite the overhead conditions looking very promising for a bowling side, a tired and injury-ridden West Indies bowling attack couldn't capitalise. After batting sensibly and digging in to see off the threat of the second new ball taken by the West Indies early in the day, Sibley made his century just before lunch after having batted for 312 balls. Stokes followed shortly after lunch, the 255 balls he took to reach his 100, his second slowest in Test cricket. The restrained cricket, however, was not to last, as Stokes then accelerated from 100 to 150 in just 46 deliveries, holding 120 and Stokes at 176, his second highest Test score. England were looking in a strong position to accelerate and post a big first innings total. Indeed, with the help of a quick 40 from Joss Buttler and 31 not out from Don Bess, England declared the day 409 for 9. West Indies started steadily in their reply, but lost opener John Campbell for 12, bowled LBW by Sam Curran. The day ended with Craig Brathwaite and night watchman Alzari Joseph, leading the West Indies to an overnight total of 32 for 1. Special mention must also go to West Indies bowler Roston Chase, who took a fifer and ended with figures of 5 for 172. So it's a very good day for England today. And we haven't really been able to say that much in this Test series so far, but we can say it definitely today. And so the first thing really to talk about is England's batting display. And how much can we see this first innings display as a message of hope? And why can't England do this regularly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Jacob, do you want to?
Oh, yeah, sure. First of all, Pav, you always do these intros so much more articulately than I do. I kind of stumble through, usually slightly drunk. But yeah, also just to add on to the end of it, Alzari Joseph, who finished at the end, second last ball of the day, was out, but it wasn't reviewed by Joe Root, and that was deeply unfortunate. So it should have been 2. Should have been 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, on England's batting performance, it was very good. Sibley and Stokes, obviously, in particular, but very solid contributions from a newly reinforced batting lineup. I mean, Dom Bess will feel hard done by being down at number 10 when he's a very capable batsman. He's not quite an all-rounder, but he is capable. And so it was a very good performance. In terms of why they can't do it more regularly, I think if I had the answer to that question, I would instantly be working for the ECB in quite a high-level capacity. They collapse in the batting with such a sort of statistically worrying rate. It's really common, more so than I think basically any other team. I really have no idea why they can't do it more, but it makes it sweeter when it happens.
Yeah, I suppose it means we can appreciate it, but we'd like to see it happen more often.
I mean, do you think obviously because Root came in, one test in, and do you think that made any difference to what, like the England kind of, what they were thinking when they were going into the batting order? And do you think they had more of a stronger point of view, or do you think that was just kind of, obviously he looked a bit shaky and it wasn't the best performance from him, but the others, they stepped up and they did their job. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's fair for us to say that. I mean, Root's been away from the England camp for 2 weeks because obviously he missed last week because he had to isolate, and then the week before was when his daughter was born. So he's missed 2 weeks of being in that sort of environment with the rest of the team and training with them. So he's probably rusty because of that. And I suppose, it probably did do something for the rest of the batting lineup to say, well, we need to step up and perform now, and especially Stokes and Sibley, as we saw.
I'd say actually the selection in the lower order probably did more to reassure the England batting lineup, in the sense that when Stokes was pretty much past his 100, he could kind of say, well, we've actually still got a lot of batting to go. I can risk it a bit more. I can shift through the gears, try and increase the scoring rate, and it's not going to trigger a massive collapse if I get out, because we do have batting to come. And so I think actually that helped, but definitely the captain has got to be a calming presence. And when he's such a skilled batsman, even if he is struggling for a little bit of form, it can't hurt, really.
Yeah. And I think obviously because Stokes is such an experienced player, having someone like that at the other end of the wicket is always such a big help, especially because Dom Sibley's, he's relatively new to the scene, and he's just scored a big century. That obviously one of the slowest centuries, but it was a key century in a key innings. But I think it was so important that he was there with someone so experienced, and to actually have someone like that at the end to talk to him through his innings. I think that's probably been a very important thing for him. Just to have that level-headed kind of calmness, and I think that's just very important.
Well, on the subject of how slow Sibley's century was, I believe Pav has some statistics.
You have statistics?
Whip out.
Yeah, I do. So what we usually do with the pod is we usually start the episode, or sort of early on in the episode, we find sort of the most interesting statistic we've got from the day, and the one that I found today is actually one of two for this episode. But the first one is that it took Sibley 312 balls to reach his century. That is the slowest anywhere in the world since 2014, and it's the slowest England century since Ian Bell in 2012. So it's really, really slow going for him.
This statistic game does get a little bit competitive, and I'm gonna, I think, play my ace card early. I know we haven't quite got onto the West Indies bowling yet, but how's this for a niche statistic? And I may or may not have heard it on the coverage today and borrowed it. But Ruston Chase, when he took his fifer, became the first West Indian spinner since 1950 to take a fifer in the first innings at Old Trafford.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe I have won the game.
I mean that's a pretty good statistic.
I feel like it's just starting, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what we will get on to spin and how Old Trafford is looking for spin a bit later in the episode. But I just want to ask a question that we've spoken about Ben Stokes and how he shored up Dom Sibley's innings, and he gave him that sort of extra boost and that sort of guidance from the other side of the wicket. But just how important is Ben Stokes for England now? And it's fair to say that he's England's best batsman at the moment.
Well, I think right now he is the best batsman, just because the way he's played everything. You see the commentators focusing on his technique and how important he is to the team and how well he's done in the last year. I think just in terms of being there as a mentor and as a captain, he is the perfect player to do that. Even though some people might say, it's a lot of weight on him, but I think as probably one of the most experienced players, he's a very important person in the team right now. And with a lot of young players coming in and like learning from him and being there in the team with him and seeing how his work ethic, I think is very important. But yeah, I mean, lots of people are saying being captain and being a star player, there can be problems. I mean, I think some of the problems, I do agree with them. But who else can, I don't know, who else can take his kind of spot? Some people say Josh Butler, because he's just a bit, I reckon, just less of a role, kind of just sitting under Stokes. Just because he is a dominant player. Of course, he's a dominant player. But he's also that kind of level-headed as well. And he's also there to advise Stokes as well in whatever he's doing. So, but I think he's probably the key player in the England team right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and it's obviously the burden of captaincy since last week has been lifted from him and given back to Joe Root. And Joe Root, of course, is a very capable captain of England and very good. In terms of being the best batsman in the team, it's got to be Stokes, because Root is, unfortunately, we know how good he can be, but at the moment he's got a long layoff and so on. And previously he was struggling for a bit of form. But Stokes is such an important influence, and you really see it just when people bat with him. He's such a calming influence at the crease. He really controls the game. And look at Sibley today. He did some of his best batting and with Stokes, and he really came out of his shell after he got that 100. Ultimately, it led to his downfall. But that's kind of what needed to happen. He needed to accelerate, and he was trying to. If you look at Pope in South Africa, he did all his best work pretty much in a partnership with Stokes. And these new, relatively pretty young, inexperienced guys coming in, batting with Stokes seems to just up their game, and I think that's really a sign of a great player.
Yeah, definitely. I think that part of what we've seen with Joe Root, I think it goes back to what you were saying, Maia, where the captaincy can be a burden sometimes. And obviously Root's average before he was captain is higher than now he's captain. But I think that Stokes, as you said, doesn't have that sort of burden of captaincy, and he doesn't have to make those decisions, and he's not always at the centre of the team into the decisions that are made. And so I think that I think explains part of why he's taken that mantle of England's best batsman from Root, and obviously Joe Root has tremendous promise as well, and has is a tremendous player, and he does contribute a valuable. He's very valuable to that team, but Stokes really has that quality.
But before we're too harsh on Root, we have to remember he's still, I believe, the only member of this current England team with a career batting average over 40.
Yeah.
So he's doing well. Like
it's not like he's just he's done. He has done consistently well, and even though obviously he's had a rusty start, I feel like he's going to come into his game a bit more later on. And obviously because of this year and just how slow it's been in terms of cricket, and there's people, it takes toll, like other things take toll on people, and they might not be fully at their capacity or like their best standard. But I think we just need to give him a bit more time and to get back in, and hopefully he can score some more runs for us.
Yeah,
well, speaking of not being at your best standard, shall we talk about the Windies bowling attack?
Yes, let's do that. They struggled.
Really unfortunate for them today, and as Maia was saying about the layoff and everything, it definitely caused pretty prominent issues for the West Indies in terms of injuries, really, and kind of fitness, health, but predominantly injuries. Alzari Joseph has hurt his tricep. Kemar Roach was off the field for a while.
Yeah.
Shannon Gabriel is noticeably stiff and was targeted by the England team. So, what's happened with the West Indies? Such a dominant performance in the first game, and now a pretty limp bowling performance these last 2 days. Especially Shannon Gabriel. What a turnaround he's had.
Yeah. I think, I watched some of the Windies bowlers, and you could just tell from the start, from when they were running in, before they were running in, the energy and the fitness it wasn't like taking a toll, but it was more, you could just tell that they were tired and they weren't at their full, quality, based on obviously the accuracy and some spraying wides and buys and all of that. I think it's quite hard to, you can't really say that they've done, it's not really their fault, because they haven't been prepared properly. And, it's been 4 or 5 months of absolutely nothing, going straight into doing how many overs, 30 overs, bowling 30 overs, when there's been absolutely no preparation whatsoever. Well, obviously they've had a little bit of preparation, but not enough to be on it every ball for the whole 100, however many overs, and playing 5 days in a row. I mean, they've had one test, but you need to have more preparation than that. And it's the same for everyone, same for all the county players, club players. They need to have preparation, and the test players have to have even more preparation. So I think in terms of the bowlers, I think they just need to gather their thoughts and make sure they're on it for the next day, the next few days.
Yeah, I think the best thing that the West Indies batting lineup can do now is to give bowlers some time to rest. Keep them off the field for at least a day, so that they can have time to rest up. And when they come back, they'll have some more energy and be able to, hopefully be able to be taking the wickets that just eluded them quite a lot today.
Yeah, a lot of it, I think, you can't really blame the players, and a lot of it has to land on the selectors and the coaching staff, in the sense that you can see the bowlers at the moment are giving it their all. Shannon Gabriel especially, let's be honest, for how good he can be, which we saw in the last test, he played pretty terribly today and yesterday. Lots of inconsistency, made Shane Dowrich's life a nightmare. But he was really trying hard. There were a lot of effort balls in there. It was more the case that the West Indies felt this was a must-win game, wrap up, I believe, Pav's favourite statistic, their first series win in England since, 1988?
1988, yeah.
They felt it was a must-win game, and so they felt it wasn't possible to rest these frontline bowlers, all 3 of whom now have had injury issues, because they simply don't have the strength in depth that England have, bringing in a completely fresh and world-class bowling attack, when the West Indies have some very exciting but unproven talents in their reserve squad. So the coaching staff and the selectors really have to raise their hands and take the blame for all 3 of their frontline seamers getting injured to some extent.
Yeah, I think it's important to just realise that, they're just coming back into this, and obviously the coaching staff have to make important decisions, and selectors in terms of the bowling attack, but they can see that what's happening to the bowlers now after 1-2 days of play, and like consistently bowling after not bowling for a long time, that amount of overs is takes a massive toll. So I think they just need to think about what they're going to do next, and hopefully they can rest their bowlers and get some massages and physios straight on them, ice baths, all of that. And then they can come back stronger and hopefully see some more catch. Well, and obviously not for us, but their fielding has to be more. They have to be more on it and more focused.
Yeah.
Because those important drops. They dropped Sibley on 8, and then there was a clear run-out chance or something. I think there was a clear run-out
Oh,
chance.
Shannon Gabriel. Oh,
Terrible.
Yeah, that was.
an inch away. It was Nathan Lyon-esque. It was
Yeah.
terrible.
Any bad fielding, and you just refer to Nathan Lyon. Think,
Yeah.
no, you can't have anything like that anymore. Anytime.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a bit like how you refer to some of the deliveries Gabriel delivered as Harmison-esque. Steve Harmison was a fantastic bowler, and he's only remembered for taking extremely high numbers of wickets in innings, and then also sending them straight to second slip. So, but the West Indies did have a little bit of hope and a little bit of success in the form of Ruston Chase, lanky spinner Ruston Chase, who took 5 for 172, which was pretty good going for a spinner in conditions such as these. And he really, for a man who famously does not spin the ball very much, extracted some real turn and bounce.
He got a lot of spin off that ball.
Yeah.
So he'll be happy, and leads to questions of, in the next test, if this pitch is, because it's on the same pitch, if it's anything like it is in this test, possibly more degraded, do they go 2 spinners as they bring big man Raheem Cornwall in?
Yeah.
Well, that's the question, isn't it?
I think that the next test, I mean, their selection will depend on what happens in this test, really. You know, it's all going to be decided by the result of this test. And if they manage to wrap up the series in this test, which is looking more unlikely after today's events, you know, but if they do manage to wrap up the series in the test, then they will be able to experiment more with their selection, and not just include 2 spinners, but they will be able to give some of those untested, inexperienced players that we were talking about, you know, some of the very exciting young players they have, they'll be able to give them the opportunity to go out, because there won't be a series riding on it. But I think that, as you said yesterday, Jacob, I think that the sad thing is that if they don't manage to wrap up the series in this test, then their bowlers who have taken such a pounding so far will be, you know, the pressure will be next test, and they'll be told to go out there and do it again. And I think that's something that will be key for both the next test, but also the long-term success of that West Indies bowling attack, because they're very exciting, and there's a huge amount of potential there. But it's about how these bowlers are managed. So, you know, Shannon Gabriel is struggling with an injury that is causing his game to be disrupted, as we saw today. And if that injury isn't managed properly, it could turn into something a lot more serious. So it does depend on the results of this test.
Yeah, and I think it'd be important for the West Indies team to just kind of take a look at, you know, obviously their bowlers they put a lot of pressure on their seam bowlers to do well and to get all the wickets. And I think especially because obviously we watched Dom Best bowl very well in the first test, and you know he's a good young spinner. He's come into the squad and he's actually blossomed in the squad, and he's done really well. I think he can be a really key spinner, but the West Indies team need to see that, you know, he's also been a very useful spinner for the England team, and if they can do that with their team, and then, you know, obviously see what happens, but if they've got to try some new things out and see if they can get some wickets, and well, hopefully we don't lose the wickets. But
with all this promotion of Dom Bess, you clearly aren't aware of our ongoing love affair.
I was just about to bring this up.
we are Pav, of course, being a member of the Sikh community, is a big fan of Amar Virdi, and so am I. He's wrote me into it. And we've been relentlessly campaigning for him to be included in the English.
That's like our big campaign over the course of this podcast, is to get him his test debut.
Yeah.
But it's not happened so far. But the question is,
we have at the moment.
Well, hoping.
Let's see what happens with that.
But bring it in.
I mean, if England do play 2 spinners in the next test, then there's no reason that he can't be included.
Exactly.
But
Here's a statistic. Search for you, and maybe this can be a question to those at home. When was the last time England played a Test match with two non-part-time spinners? When was the last time? I certainly can't remember a Test match with two frontline spinners playing, especially in England. I genuinely can't remember one. So
yeah, that's true.
if you have any answers, tweet us with the hashtag TOOPod, message us, whatever.
I can.
We're stumped. We'll have to get TMS onto it.
Yeah, no, we need someone to look up the stats like they have on TMS, but we'll give that responsibility to our listeners, and we'll ask them that question and see what they say, see what they come up with. Okay, so moving on, Roston Chase took 5 for 172, and that is the most expensive fifer in England since India's Bishan Bedi took 6 for 226 at Lord's in 1974. And England went on to beat India by an innings and 285 runs in that game. So does Roston Chase, does his sort of success, and I say that sort of in inverted commas because it was very expensive, but does that success with the ball today bode well for Dom Bess, especially in the later stages of this game? So, thinking about the West Indies will be batting last, thinking about if we go into a situation in day 5, much like we had in the last test, where the game is very finely poised, will that be Dom Bess's time to shine? And will he be able to get something out of this pitch and do something with this game?
Yeah, well, I think he'd be a very important player in this time, just because he's a very good spinner. He knows his game. He knows where he wants to pitch the ball, and I think he's going to be important to get going in terms of just bringing him onto bowl early and getting him into the top order, and just seeing if he can do what he did last time, and hopefully he can really blossom in the next few days and in the next test. And I think he's going to be a very important player for England in the future, just because he's been very, very confident with his bowling, and that's such a good way of starting your, especially in a test match. And you just need to be confident and know your game and know where you're bowling it and pitching it and getting that turn. And I think he's a very good young player, and I'm rooting for him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm not sure of his of all of his stats. So I'm waiting for you guys to give me something new to learn.
Well, I think it's a fantastic opportunity for him, and he's shown us in South Africa he's a man who can take wickets. He already has a Test fifer to his name, which is a fantastic achievement for a young spinner.
Yeah.
Especially in an England team. The thing we always talk about with Dom Bess, we discussed it a few days ago when we were talking about him in the first test, is he doesn't necessarily generate the most spin or turn or bounce or have the most variation, but he has such fantastic control over the ball. He really puts it on a dime. He puts it where he wants it. He can drift it, enough. He can turn it enough. He can bounce it enough. But he does what he wants with it every time. And that's fantastic to see, because it really leads to him having control of the batsman and the scoring rate. And as we've seen with Chase, a man who famously doesn't turn it very much, the pitch will do the rest for him. So as long as he has that control on a pitch like we have at the moment, where there is fantastic turn and bounce being generated, possibly not as much as Chase, because Chase is a bit taller than him. But when the pitch is doing it for you, that control that he has means he is more than capable of taking a lot of wickets on this pitch. And he almost did in his 2 overs or so this evening. So I think on day 5, he could really tear it up and have great fun with it.
Yeah. I mean, so would we all say that he's going to be the key to England's bowling attack and sort of wrapping this game up? Will he be the key to that? Or?
Sort of, with one caveat. I think the key will be him, plus the fact that they've selected a left-arm seamer in Sam Curran, which will
That would be
great rough outside the right-handers off stump. The West Indies have 10 right-handers, 1 left-hander. So I think the fact that rough will be generated outside the right-handers off stump for Bess will give him the optimum chance of success on a pitch which is already helpful when he is already skilled. And I think on the 5th day, if it gets to that, he'll have a day out.
Yeah,
I agree.
brilliant.
But I made so it'll probably be wrong because I made a prediction on this show.
Well, I mean, my prediction yesterday was that the West Indies bowling attack had to improve today, and that didn't happen. So I have to hold my hand up and say I was wrong yesterday, and we will probably be wrong many more times.
This is statistics we need to find out. How often do our predictions on this show? What percentage of the time do they go wrong? I reckon it's pretty high.
That's a stat to find out.
Yeah, we need to figure that out. Okay, so going to something away from this test match, the government announced today that they sent a statement out today that says that as part of a pilot program, a small number of spectators will be allowed to attend sporting events, and of those sporting events, 2 of them are going to be friendly county cricket games to test the viability of spectators coming back to sport. So especially looking at the county games, is it the right idea, and would we be ready to see spectators back, especially at the cricket?
Well, I think spectators are a very key part of cricket, and I think there's a massive difference between playing on a pitch that's filled to the brim. Well, not filled to the brim, but just with people watching, and there is that pressure on you that little bit more. And I think in terms of having people watch you at a live stadium, can actually boost it. It makes you more conscious of what you're doing in the field, and like how you what your body language is like. And I've seen it in some of the West Indies bowlers, because when they're obviously they're tired, but their body language is a bit different, and they're not as if there was a crowd there, they wouldn't be like that. They wouldn't have that body language. And I think it's really important to have some spectators to just kind of give them that little boost, being like, yes, I need to be on my game here. I need to focus on where I'm bowling it, and not focus on like if I'm tired or anything like that, because I need to perform, and I need to perform for a crowd. And I think that is a massive part of cricket, just having that kind of a little bit of that extra boost to make you think, oh, I need to be on point here. Like, I can't make a mistake. And I think half of the reason why, half of the reasons why some of the bowlers and some of the batters haven't really been playing as well as they can, it's not their technique. They have all the skills. They just need that little bit of kind of oomph and pressure, because some people really, they control the game because of pressure. And I mean, Stokes obviously is such an amazing batter, and he's done absolutely incredibly for the last year or so. And half of the reason why he loves the pressure, he loves the crowd, and he gets his confidence, and he just goes at the ball. And when there's crowds there's massive crowds and everyone's cheering him on, that is the best feeling, and it really spurs you on. So I think the idea of getting spectators back in is very important, and it makes a massive difference to how you approach the game. But I mean, yeah, some people might say, oh no, it's too health risk and that kind of thing. But I think they can really actually well adjust to it, and they can put things in place and to make sure that everyone's safe and all of that. And but yeah, no, I think it's an important thing. And I mean, I don't know if you guys think the same, or if it's just me or cricketers in general always like to have a bit of kind of people there to spur you on a bit.
Yeah, this is an issue we've discussed with a few episodes ago with Kevil, friend of the pod, Kevil. Yeah, we came to the conclusion that ultimately, in terms of our watching experience, we didn't actually miss crowds all that much.
Yeah.
However, that may have just been because it was after the first test and we didn't want them to see what England were doing. But in all seriousness, I think I have to agree with Maia. While watching it as it is, I'm not missing the crowd too much, and I understand obviously why they can't be there. And
Yeah.
I think the public safety aspect of it is the most important thing. Absolutely, the crowds just bring another dimension to it. They G up the players. They give them that little bit of boost, which just improves the game, and also they bring a character to it. Each area, each ground has a different character. I think it's important to get them back in obviously a safe and practical way, because obviously the worst thing that can happen is we bring people back too soon and public safety is compromised, and then the game of cricket has to shut down altogether again. But absolutely, it's a fantastic thing to be able to bring fans back, and I think, given the government's general messaging on this, which is that will largely be that fans might be back by October, will largely be back to the old normal. We've talked so much about the new normal, but will largely be back to the old normal-ish by November. I think if that can be done safely, then absolutely it will be wonderful to see fans back at Test cricket, and yeah, it will be great.
I also think in terms of being a fan, a cricket fan, the best thing as a cricket fan is to go and watch a cricket game.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, we're in the comfort of our home watching the test match, but the best feeling as a fan is to be at a cricket pitch and watch and in a cricket stadium and watching cricket live. And like, I hope that returns soon, because obviously we have to be aware of health and COVID and all of that. But as a fan, it's just the best feeling being able to watch cricket live and being there in the moment. Now I know I wasn't there in the World Cup, but my brother and my brothers and my dad were both there watching in Trafalgar Square when on the big screen. And I was actually playing cricket on the day. I couldn't even do anything. I wasn't watching. We were just listening because we were playing, and then there was a massive crowd in the pub where we were. But yeah, no, I think it's also, as a fan, it's just important to be in there and cheering your players on. They your country's players. They're
Yeah.
And it's the same with any sport, in football, tennis.
You're very much preaching to the converted, because we had tickets for Edgbaston for this tour.
Oh no!
Very unhappy. Personally, when the World Cup final was going on, I also wasn't watching because I was in a car driving back from Rotterdam, where I'd been, of all things, covering the World Rowing Championships
Wow.
as a young journalist. But yeah, it's such a fantastic thing being at a ground and watching a game. And as we've seen, we're so fortunate in England that Test cricket particularly still generates these massive crowds, where, to contrast with the West Indies at the moment, a lot of their stadiums just aren't surviving because the crowds aren't attracted. So yeah, it's a wonderful thing, and hopefully it can continue soon.
And I think there's a important aspect there for the financial aspect as well, in terms of the sooner that we get crowds, even if they're limited crowds, even if stadiums can only be at sort of 15 or 20% of their capacity, it would be really good, because it gives, especially county cricket, it gives county cricket a lifeline. Because we know how precarious the finances can be. Not every sport, and certainly not cricket, is like the Premier League, where there's so much money in there. It doesn't matter if there's an interruption. Cricket is one of those sports that if there was an extended interruption, it would have a really serious financial impact. And so getting crowds in would just help to shore up the finances of some county teams, and just ensure that cricket can it can be viable in the future. And this is especially given that we're a year after that sort of sensational World Cup win. And we're in a period where both the England men and women's teams are both world champions of the 50 over format. This should have been a summer where the ECB really pushed that sort of getting into grassroots cricket sort of scheme. And they did have big plans to push, especially young people, into grassroots cricket and really inspire that interest amongst the next generation of cricket fans and also players. And obviously that hasn't happened this summer. So, obviously that will have to be pushed forward to next year. But if we can get some sort of competitive cricket back in the domestic game, and we can get crowds in, even if they have to take, really stringent precautions, it will be a really good thing for the future of domestic cricket, especially in this country. And it will go a long way to ensuring that it survives. So I think there's a really important financial aspect there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, focusing on the finances. Do you by any chance work for the ECB? But it obviously the financial aspect is important. I think the ECB do focus on it too much, and actually there is an issue. It's not on our peek behind the curtain talking points which we get sent, but I do want to talk about it. But just before I do, absolutely, it's a good thing that grassroots cricket has the funding which it so desperately needs. Once we can bring back crowds and so on. The issue I want to talk about is actually something we didn't really mention today and haven't mentioned so much, but this morning, Ashley Giles, is he chairman of the ECB or president of the ECB? I can't remember which he is. He runs the ECB basically, former England spinner. He really hung Jofra Archer out to dry and about his breach of the lockdown protocols. And what was really sad to see for me was, first of all, such a high up in the ECB really kind of exposing one of the England players to such criticism by basically hammering him in the press. And also the fact that he didn't say, oh, he could have endangered the team, or he could have endangered the West Indies, or even he could have endangered cricket from going on, but he said, oh, he could have cost us millions of pounds. Yes, it's important, but is that really the thing to focus on?
Yeah.
And why is cricket not so focused on that sort of thing right now?
Yeah, I was actually going to put this in today's talking points, but I thought that, because we have 6 talking points already, I thought that might be too much.
Our listeners, Maia is on the move.
I was just moving.
Viewers couldn't see it, but
you'll be able to see that on the YouTube.
Sorry, Pav, carry on.
I was going to include that, but I just thought that we might not have enough time to bring it up. But no, it's good that it's come up, in that I saw this as well, and I did think that, is that really the thing that you should be focusing on? And also, Jofra has made a mistake, and it's quite a serious mistake. But he's held his hands up, and he's accepted the punishment that he's going to get for that. And obviously, he's not playing this game as well. Is there any more need to push the knife in anymore? And is there any more need to put more fuel on that fire? And I don't think it was the right thing for him to say.
Maia, any views on that?
I think
as an ECB possibly contracted player,
yeah,
use your words carefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously important that the ECB hold the rules, and people who break those rules will pay the consequences. And I think it's just, if Jofra's like any other player, and if he's made that decision to break the rules, and I think it's silly from his from my point of view, it's a silly thing to do. And if this situation is, all of us have to work for it, and we all have to do our little part. And I think they made the right choice, but I'm glad that he's confessed to it, and that's the best thing that he could have done. Yeah. He's been honest with it, and he did have to face the consequences. But I think just in terms of just staying safe and right now, and the whole situation. I think we just all need to kind of work together, and especially with the ECB, because they've been put on a lot of pressure, and lots of players and are asking lots of questions, and I think they're doing all the best they can to try and get us back into cricket. So I think we just have to be patient and make sure that we adhere to the rules, really.
Yeah. I mean, we all understand that what Jofra did was wrong, and actually I'm going to kind of meet in the middle of you two and say I'm not sure he has entirely served his punishment. I think he probably should be left out of the next test, regardless of whether the series is on the line or not. I think, the missing of this test is something that just had to happen on medical grounds. Yeah. So I think he probably should miss the next test.
It's a bit like yesterday,
sorry.
Where we said yesterday that the punishment actually isn't missing this test, because that's the medical thing that he has to do. The punishment will actually be what happens afterwards, and what the ECB decide. So it'll be interesting to see what happens afterwards.
But I mean, Maia, I won't ask you to be critical of Ashley Giles too much, because you may rely on him to some small degree. But I think while Jofra had to be punished for what he's done, and he probably has to miss the next test, it was incredibly inappropriate and wrong and bad for his welfare as a player, which the coaches were talking about so much. We have to support him even though he's done something wrong. We have to make sure he's okay in terms of his well-being. I think it was so inappropriate for Ashley Giles to then come out and very publicly hammer him, and again, not on the basis of medical endangerment or hurting the team or the sport, but the fact that it could have cost money. And I think that felt a little grubby to me.
Yeah. I see what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. I think.
Well, you don't have a job anymore, so.
Yeah, I think he just. Yeah, it's hard to say with because some old players, ex-players, some of them are very tough, and they'll be tough on young players coming in. Jofra's still young; he's not, he's still naive, but he's grown into the team, and I think it's bad. It's bad that he's done this. He's bad that he's made that decision to break the rules. But Ashley Giles, I know Ashley Giles is obviously, he's gone at him, and he's made it all about money and the ECB. But I think he should be focusing on, his welfare and his health more than money. That's just the underlying, reason. So I think, I think it's just it's hard to say. Because I know. Obviously, you think it's very inappropriate, and I agree with you. But then, the ECB are very kind of vocal about finances, and they want to make sure that we're all kind of cared for that. So that makes total sense that he'll want to make it about money. But it probably did cost them quite a lot of money.
Well, it could have done if it had got the cricket shut down, but ultimately it really hasn't cost anyone anything, thankfully. But it could have been a fairly bad scenario, and we discussed that on the last episode, even to the extent of a slightly apocalyptic event in Barbados. But
we took that to the extreme, the example yesterday, but it does underline the dangers that are present and just how serious the restrictions around this series are, and just why they're in place. Because these aren't normal times, but at the same time, you do have to care for your players as well. And especially when you've got such a promising young player, you do have to look after him the right way. But anyways. I think we will leave our criticism of the ECB there for just now. I'm sure it will come up again in any.
It'll continue in the next episode. Don't worry.
Now, what we usually do before the end of our episodes is we do something a little bit fun. So yesterday I gave Jacob a surprise quiz which you did pretty well in, actually.
I didn't.
So today, I want to ask you guys a question, which is that out of any former England player, so it could be from the England men's team or the women's team, and they have to be retired and they have to be not playing now, which former England player would you love to meet? And say you could only ask them one question, what question would you ask them?
Oh.
Jacob, you go first.
I'll
I'm
go
trying
first.
to think.
I'll give you the that is extremely tricky. I think probably Nasser Hussain. I have a massive soft spot for him on the Sky commentary. He's a fantastic bloke, and I really like him. And I think he'd just be good to sort of meet and talk to about cricket. If I had to ask him one question, it would probably be, how did you manage to keep player morale up when you were shouting at everyone? Like, when you were so harsh on everyone as a captain, how did you manage to get that team together? But yeah, he seems like a fantastic guy. Special shout out as well to Michael Atherton. I'm going to cheat and take two answers because he seems fantastic as well. And my question for him would be, how do you bat for so long? Because at Sky put up about Sibley, they put up a list of the slowest England centuries, 1990. I think of the 10 or 12 that were up there, about 6 were Atherton. So it was, yeah, how did he bat for so long?
Yeah,
that's mine.
Pretty good. I mean, you chose 2 again, which you usually do, but we use that again. So Maia, who would you choose?
I've had a lot of debate thinking about this because obviously, you know, there are plenty of England players, like men's players, that I'd want to meet, and you know, the absolute greats. But I went for Rachel Hayhoe-Flint. So she's an ex-England women's cricketer. She was the captain of England from, I think it was 1966 to 78. And she redefined women's cricket, I think. So she was a really key figure in women's cricket, and I think she's still alive today, actually. She's just amazing. She's an amazing player, but also an amazing woman. So I definitely want to meet. So I'd want to meet her and just see. I want to ask her what it was like back then with, you know, what do they play with, what was the dress code, and for the women, and I think, well, that's just another question, but my main question would be, how did you encourage more girls to start joining cricket back then, when it was, wasn't actually very popular, and it was just kind of starting. There wasn't any paid contracts or anything like that. How do you encourage more girls to play? I mean, there was nothing in the game. I think that would be my question. But also just, she'd just be, it'd just be amazing to meet her, because she's a role model for lots of people. And there's an award for there's a Hayhoe award, and I think Elise Perry won that last year or something. Yeah. So
fantastic player, Elise Perry.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant answer.
Up to you to beat that.
I would go more recent, and I would pick Monty Panessa.
I wonder what could have led to that.
But no, the reason I would pick Monty is because obviously he's been such a role model for South Asians over the last 10 years, especially, South Asians want to get into cricket. And the question I'd ask him, I mean, I'd love to just have a chat with him anyway. But the question I would ask him, I mean, I'm going to cheat as well and go with 2 like Jacob did. I would ask him first, can you teach me how to bowl? That would be.
You can't bowl off spin, can you?
No, that's why I need him to teach me. But the other thing I'd ask him, and the question I would ask him is, what was it like being such a trailblazer, not not just for South Asian, but more specifically for the Sikh community in the UK, because he was the first Sikh cricketer to play for England. So I'd ask him what it was like being such a role model, and sort of how he handled being a role model, and also just how, what he thinks about being that figure that inspired a lot of young South Asian kids to get into the game. That's what I'd ask him.
I have a question for Monty.
Yeah.
How could he possibly, after we've praised him so much on this show, completely ignore us and then set up his own podcast 3 weeks after we did? I don't know how he could do that to us.
But we'll get him on at some point.
Yes, like he's replied to any of our messages.
Yeah.
One of those DMs.
Yeah.
No, we need to do it. We just need to message him on everything. I mean, he's going to end up blocking us, but let's see.
I mean, to be honest, Maia, why do you think we got you on here? It's the England team. You know some of them.
Yeah. Well, it's. I think it's. I mean, I would. Obviously they're not ex England players yet, but I've played against a lot of the girls and a lot of the England girls, and it's actually. It's such an honour.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still starstruck that I'm playing, and like that's just.
Yeah, I can't imagine what that would be like, sort of playing against and with your heroes and people that you've looked up to. It must be amazing.
Right. It is amazing, and I mean, Charlotte Edwards has always been one of my biggest role models, and having her as a coach for Hampshire and being then under the Southern Vipers, it's just been incredible, and she's been such an amazing person. She's an amazing person anyway, but her advice has just been really, really good for me, and she's really let me kind of blossom as well, because I wasn't given opportunities at Middlesex later on, but then when I came to Hampshire, I was opening the bowling and opening the batting, and that was something I really needed because it was going to push me on. Yeah. And it was successful, it really helped. And obviously I stayed on for the second year. And Lottie's just been an amazing mentor to be under. And yeah, it's very exciting. So I'm very looking forward to next year and hoping we're going to get lots more cricket.
Well, if any of the delightful England ladies fancy stopping for a moment being superstars and role models and want to do a small-time podcast appearance, we'd love to have them on.
Well, I'll ask around.
Thanks so much. Honestly, it's the best thing we could possibly do.
No, it's all right. It's fine. It's perfect. I'm glad you asked me because I've been busy, but it's nice to have kind of chats and about it. And
we
haven't really done that with people since. Yeah,
we probably haven't seen each other since you left school. So
I know. Yeah, no, it's been a very long time. So
we've got to have a net session. I can send a few of my dodgy off spinners down, and you can smack me for 6.
Brilliant. Right. Good. So the last thing that we do every episode that we're reviewing a test match is that we finish by listing our star players from both teams, the moment of the day that stood out to us, and one word to describe the day. So that is what we're going to do now, and then we will finish the podcast. So Maia or Jacob, whoever wants to go first with that.
Jacob, take it away.
Shall I go first again? Okay. Yeah, usually Pav just doesn't ask. I just have to interrupt him all the time. So, star player from England, as much as my heart wants to say Dom Sibley for a robust and almost monk-like century, I think Ben Stokes had the biggest impact on the game. He really accelerated when he needed to. He slightly sacrificed his own wicket for the good of the team, trying to push on, and he made a fantastic century, second highest score in his career. Really good from him. West Indies, Roston Chase got a B. Took 5 of the wickets of the 9 that fell. Really good performance, and he seems to save his absolute best for England. So he's doing really well. And I think it's also nice to see the spin coming into the game. Moment of the day, probably I'm going to cheat again and choose 2. Both the centuries coming up because that's kind of when we knew, right, England are set for a bit of a score here. That was nice. And then one word to describe the day.
Stealing all of mine now.
One word to describe the day, probably dominated by England.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, brilliant.
Well, he's taken both of mine, but
He
I'm going to
does it all the time.
You are allowed to agree.
Yeah, I am agreeing. I am agreeing. I think in terms of star player, I was going to agree with you with Chase, just because he's, even though it was the slowest and like the second, what was the second most?
It was the most expensive FIFA in England since
even though it was, I think it was important that the West Indies, they had someone there to take that FIFA, and they did have someone to do that.
Yeah.
So Chase was very important in that. And then obviously for England, I'm going to agree with Stokes, but I think in terms of just kind of being able to blossom in the game and be able to play with freedom, I think Dom Sibley did that really well. Yeah. Even though it was very long and slow, he stuck in there, and he had, and this is my word for the day, patience.
Yeah.
He had the patience, and he didn't, obviously at the end he messed it up, but he was there and he stuck in, and that's the most important thing as a batter in that situation. You're in, and you need to stay there. And they built a really, really good partnership, and that was the foundation of how well they did later on. And I think that was very important that both Stokes and Sibley did so well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's mine.
Brilliant.
And Sibley as well brought out a couple of those beautiful reverse sweeps, which completely the wrong line on leg stump and turning away.
Because Sibley would try and he'd miss and get hit on the pad, and then Stokes would come in and go bang straight for 4.
Hit it for a century. Hit it for 4 for a century, and Sibley was plugging away just desperately. But he's a fantastic player.
Oh, moment of the day, I forgot. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Moment
of the day, I'm going to say, obviously the hundreds were such really important. But the fact that Stokes went on and got 150 just shows that he's just such an important player, and he's done so well to get there. And what was it, 50 off 46?
46, yeah.
46 balls, and that shows both sides of the game that he can play, and he comes in with his test 100, and then scores 50 off 46. That's a one-day T20, not even T20, one day. Yeah. He'll score 80 off 46 in a T20. But I think it just showed, how such a good player he is, such a kind of grounded player he is. And yeah, that 150 just kind of confirmed it. Obviously, their hundreds were brilliant as well. But he just carried on, and he could. I bet he could keep going. Not,
I like
to get him out.
I like your word for the day as well. The patience aspect of Dom Sibley. And here is a bold prediction, which again will probably be wrong, but just based on the patience that he has and the ability to play through all that, I think that's a man who, given the right situation and enough time, could make a Test double 100. Yeah. And possibly a couple of them, and he's looking really solid. So I like to make that prediction, and it will go wrong.
I think that in terms of just Dom Sibley, in terms of his, the fact that he's kind of come in and he's been given chances to do, to perform, and obviously that horrific leave in the first wasn't great, but I think he's just, he's this test has been a test for him, but he's been really well, informed, and he's thought about his game really a lot obviously in the last week and or so, and it just showed he has the capability of being a really good opener for England.
Yeah.
And now he just needs to be a little bit more proactive, just to the ticking the strike along a little bit more, and having a bit more intent to just get off strike. And obviously they're going to be bowling well as well, but that makes you the better player by being a little bit more proactive, especially because Stokes is the perfect person to look up to. He's brilliant, and the fact that he's been batting with him just makes it even easier to do that, because he's someone you can talk to and he will guide you. And I think those two as a pair will be sorted.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Very quickly, your rundown.
Very quickly, I would say my star player from the West Indies, Roston Chase, but I want to give a special mention to Shannon Gabriel, just because he didn't have the best day, but the heart that he showed to keep on bowling, even though things were going, not very well for him at all, and just to stay in the game, that was something that was just it was brilliant from him, and it showed just the dedication that he has. So I want to give him a special mention, and hopefully things get better for him, and hopefully he gets over that injury. From England, I would say Stokes was a star, but I want to say Dom Sibley, just because he proved himself today. My moment of the day would be when he scored his 100, because it's that vindication for him, and it's just that sort of acknowledgement that I stayed in for so long. I did the hard work, and now I've done it. And Stokes, we've seen get 100 many times before in his career, but this is only Sibley's second, and it's going to be such a boost for him. So that will be my moment of the day. And then my word to describe the day will be progress, because England have shown so much progress today in terms of their batting, not just the progress in terms of how they bat and the mentality that's needed to bat a test innings, but also progress in the form of Stokes, that 50 from 46. It shows that when you get to a certain stage in the innings, he can make that progress and kick on very quickly. So that would be my word to describe the day. Yeah.
Right, fantastic.
Brilliant stuff.
Well, first person we have to thank is, as we call her, real life pro cricketer Maia Bouchier, for coming on the show. Soon, if you carry on like this, you will earn the honorary title friend of the pod.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on, and we hope to see you again soon.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
it's been a real pleasure.
No worries. No, I've absolutely loved talking cricket.
Then obviously, thank you to everyone for listening. We did have a question. I can't remember what the question we asked you was. I think it was about statistics.
When was the last time England played a test with two proper spinners? Full-on spinners in their lineup. And if you can tell us that, we will be eternally grateful, and you'll have our eternal respect.
So tweet us using the hashtag TOOpod, message us on social media, anything like that. And yeah, just thank you all for listening.
Yeah, been brilliant. So thank you very much. Right. Thank you and goodbye.